Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Okay, so I remember watching this episode, Stand and Deliver, and this is one of the few I remember watching. I remember it would just randomly, this show would just randomly air, and I would just tune in and out of it because I had no idea what was going on. But I remember this episode. This episode is probably one of the more important ones on my rewatch because, and this is one of the more important ones because I rewatched this one, and it's kind of important because not only does it have an important message specifically for people with a significant other, but it also has deep lore implications that I'll get into in a minute. But in case this episode then proceeds to open up with the tourism family that we keep seeing. They show up in this episode and are currently lost trying to find Crystal Cove because yeah, they've been all over the place. They've been touring around, but they haven't really, been able to find their destinations. They've always been scared off by a monster or otherwise just got hopelessly lost. And that's exactly what happens here. They're driving through Crystal Cove, but don't know where Crystal Cove is. All they know is that they're nearby Crystal Cove, and they have no idea. But in cases at this point where they actually wind up being attacked by a man called the Dandy Highwayman, who they just see his silhouette at first because there's just this giant shadow of a man that's just standing over them, and they assume it's some giant man. But then they get closer and it's revealed to actually be the Dandy Highwayman, and he stops them and tells them to, in a British accent, to hand over all their valuables. And of course both the kid and the dad hand things over, and then he gets to the mom. He walks over to the mom, and he's very openly starts flirting with her. In a way, she openly remarks that she doesn't really have much other than her wedding ring, and even then she admits it's not worth much and shoots a death glare at her husband. But then the man points out that he would be more than happy to. That he just hopes she has a fantastic day, and also remarks that he would like to hear more from her. And this of course causes her to kind of swoon for him a little bit because she starts hearing him. She starts hearing about him talk about how he would love to hear more about her day and about how she's been doing and a whole bunch of other things. That everybody wants to hear specifically because it's just important to let people know that you care. That's the whole thing. But in case, after proceeding to blow up her car, he then proceeds to get onto his motorcycle, and then asks her if she would like to accompany him. And since she kind of likes the idea of having somebody listen to her and actually being the perfect gentleman, she decides to absolutely do that and proceeds to get on the back of his motorcycle with a spare helmet. And they proceed to drive off into the sunset with the dad despairing about the fact that his wife just got technically kidnapped from a legal standpoint, while his daughter is just very confused as to what all happened and transpired. Meanwhile, Scooby is on a date with Nova in the Blake household, and I'll get into that in a minute. But in case he's on a date with Nova at the Blake household, he's very much coddling her and just giving her affection. When suddenly, he hears a knock at the door, and he goes to open the door, only to discover several Scooby-Doo just appear, and then just a whole army of them starts raiding the house and starts shooting things up, and eventually they corner him, and then he wakes up, and it's revealed to all be a dream. But he notes it's a little bit strange and a little bit weird, and then tells Nova that he had the strangest dream because he's currently in her hospital room. He nodded off. But she then proceeds to sit bolt upright, telling him the Bureau is coming, and then there's just this massive army of Scooby-Doo that again reappear and start shooting up the place. And then Scooby wakes up again, and then he looks and he's still in Nova's hospital room, but then he looks over at the pile of empty donut boxes, and he realizes that he probably had too many donuts to eat before bed, and realizes he probably shouldn't do that anymore. At which point we then get a cutaway to the Dinkley household, where it's revealed that Angie Dinkley, she's putting in a new pool, or rather, specifically, she has a dynamite shed that she's planning to use to make a new pool, because in her own words, that is the cheapest way to make a pool, even though that is very, very unsafe. Don't do that. And of course, Velma looks at just a crude outline of the pool on the ground and points out that she's probably going to regret asking and about it. But also she notices that that they also have a new pool boy who and Angie admits she kind of hired him a little bit prematurely, but does point out that not only is he handsome, but she very much adores his accent. And of course, at this point where Velma decides to excuse herself because she's actually going to go with her friends to the mall. And even admits that she's going to go with Daphne to go dress shopping, and the pool boy takes a notable interest in that, noting that he knows that he seemingly knows the Blake family because obviously they're a very rich, very powerful family, and after asking that very weird question out of the blue, he then proceeds to go back to sunbathing. At which point Velma proceeds to go meet with her friends. Meanwhile, Daphne tells her mom that she wants to borrow money for shopping, and of course her mom points out there's no trouble and points out that her dad's money is her money, and proceeds to open up the secret vault safe, which is just hidden behind not only hidden behind a painting but hidden by remote control, so that nobody can get in unless they know the remote that does the thing, and of course, she then proceeds to pull out a huge stack of money, but Daphne only proceeds to take a little bit of it, pointing out that that's all she really needs, and then just looks at her, wondering where she went wrong. So, yeah, it's clear that Daphne is the quote-unquote screw-up of her family. It's been heavily established, but this just further implies that she's the quote-unquote screw-up of her family, considering the fact that she does not want to overly lavishly spend money on things. Which, yeah, if that's the kind of, I mean, to be fair, they're a wealthy family, they can afford to just blow money on whatever they want, but, so it doesn't really, so yeah, Daphne is the screw-up, but even then, she's just really conscious about money. That's it. That's the only reason she's the screw-up, but, in any case, she then proceeds to get into the car into the mystery machine with the rest of the Mystery Incorporated, and they proceed to go to the mall, and Daphne is very happy about being able to buy clothes for Velma, even though Velma doesn't understand half of the things that Daphne is talking about, because Daphne is a little very fashion forward. She knows a lot of things about fashion, whereas Velma really doesn't. She just kind of it picks up that Daphne is excited and is excited with her, despite not knowing exactly half the things that she's talking about. And meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby are just happy to go to the mall for a different reason, namely that they could just hit up all the food courts, which is very good, that makes them happy. And of course Shaggy asks Scooby if she could say Fred Cortapalooza, which Scooby quickly realizes that he can't, but points out that even if he can't say it, he's still excited. And the two bump fists. But in any case, as they're driving, they actually wind up pulling past a huge bunch of wreckages along the side of the road. And of course, the Mystery Incorporated, or Fred specifically, is wondering what happened. And Daphne wonders if there was some sort of pileup, at which point they arrive at the crime scene, and Sheriff Stone is consoling and the Tweed man, the man from the vacation family, and he's obviously upset about the fact that his wife is missing and has disappeared. At which point Sheriff Stone sees the mystery machine and is then visibly annoyed and wonders if the kids have some sort of radar that just smells when there's danger nearby. And Fred points out that there actually isn't, but points out that that's actually not a bad idea. At which point Daphne decides to ask what exactly is going on, and it is of course at this point where Sheriff Stone reveals that just what the Dandy Highwayman is. He's just this guy in a British trench coat and outfit, and who's been running around terrorizing people, forcing them to give up their valuables and their money, and then seducing the women, and then they just disappear, and pointing out that they might be under some sort of supernatural spell, which of course they strikes a little bit odd, but he also points out that Mystery Incorporated that of course they need to keep an eye on things because there's no real way of knowing when he's going to strike or where he's going to strike at. he just randomly appears and disappears. And it's of course at this point where Daphne points out that actually sounds terrifying and wondering where exactly the Dandy Highwayman is going to strike next. But then we actually find out. We then get a cut to what is eventually revealed to be the Blake Manor, where Barney has taken Nan on a quote unquote Hawaii vacation, but as it turns out, he just used his money to just build the Hawaii setting in his living room. He didn't actually pay any sort of extravagant fees to actually just go out and go to Hawaii. And apparently that suits Nan just fine, because apparently they don't like being around other people. So it works out. But I guess it's at this point where they actually winds up where the Dandy Highwayman actually winds up crashing through the window, and he winds up driving around the walls of the living room before stopping and telling them to proceed to rob them. And it's at this point we then cut to a town hall meeting where Barney then proceeds to explain what happens once they encounter them. They got dressed apparently, because there's an inconsistency there where they were in their bathing suits during the actual robbery, but then when the robbery actually after the robbery happened, they were fully clothed. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there, but my implication is that the Dandy Highwayman let them get dressed first and then proceed to rob them. Which makes sense considering he is robbing people, but he strikes me as a gentleman. So I don't think he would be that kind of person. He would just shows up to rob people but also treats them with respect. So yeah, in any case, he then proceeds to explain how he made Nan empty out the safe into his little black bag. And then he proceeded to seduce Nan and convinced her to ride off into the sunset with him, and that's exactly what she did. Of course Barney is very much inconsolable because he has absolutely no idea what he's going to do without his wife. And of course we find out it's a town hall meeting with all of the angry husbands who have had their wives abducted by the Dandy Highwayman. They are just venting about the fact that they lost their wives and aren't particularly happy about it, and for good reason. Obviously he's kidnapping their wives. It makes perfect sense why they would be upset. But yeah, in any case, it's at this point where Sheriff Stone actually winds up getting up to stop everybody from arguing, pointing out that of course they're men, they're strong, they're tough, they're warriors. They can easily push through any sort of hardship, and that eventually they will find the abducted women and get them back from the Dandy Highwayman. But right on cue, the Dandy Highwayman then proceeds to drive through the door of the town hall conference room. And also because of that, the door winds up landing on top of Sheriff Stone because he's standing right in front of it. And he can't get up because the Dandy Highwayman parks his motorcycle on top of him, so he can't get up. He's just stuck there, unable to see what's going on and unable to move. And of course, he then proceeds to get out and asks everybody to hand over their hand over their valuables. And he then proceeds to, and of course, Shaggy is the only one who doesn't wind up participating in the whole robbery thing, because as he points out, the only thing he has of value is Scooby, and Scooby openly admits he's not getting in the bag. So the Dandy Highwayman pretty much leaves him alone, but everybody else, yeah, he just robs everybody. And then also when he comes face to face with Mayor Nettles, he then proceeds to point out how beautiful she is, and also proceeds to point out that he's very happy to have met someone as successful and accomplished as her, and then proceeds to ask her if she would be willing to talk to him about her life, childhood, journey to mayorship, all those things. And of course, after robbing everybody, she proceeds to do exactly that. And of course, Sheriff Stone can hear all of this underneath the door, but can't really do anything about it because, again, he's stuck underneath a door, which is underneath the motorcycle. He can't move. But and of course, at this point, where Mayor Nettles then proceeds to get on the back of the Dandy Highwayman's bike, and Mystery Incorporated then proceeds to spring into action and tries to help him get out from underneath the motorcycle once he drives off, and of course they then proceed to try and find a way to trap the Dandy Highwayman, but by that point he's long gone, and Sheriff Stone then proceeds to become an inconsolable mess, because obviously he's very upset about the fact that his girlfriend / boss got kidnapped. So, he's not particularly in a good place, and he pleads with Mystery Incorporated to get Marinelle's back because without her, he's starting to feel a little bit woozy, a little bit clammy. So of course is at this point where Daphne realizes they need to learn a little bit more about the Dandy Highwayman in order to trap him. So they immediately go to the Crystal Cove Library where they talk with the Crystal Cove librarian, and I'm going to picture him because he's kind of important. I'll get to that, but yeah, he is a somewhat important character, so I will get to them. He does show up a couple of times in this, but yeah, in case they proceed to go to the librarian, and he proceeds to ask them ask him about all of his if he has any books about the Dandy Highwayman, and of course he then proceeds to point them in the general direction of where they can start looking. And tells them to actually start looking up the things about the Dandy Highwayman there. But of course they go to do that. They all pull out a bunch of books, and the rest of Mystery Incorporated start looking into it. And of course they quickly point out that they need to figure out who the Dandy. Fred points out that they need to figure out what the Dandy Highwayman actually is before he steals their girl, which of course, and that was a thing that I said during the town hall meeting, but I'm putting it here because it's a really funny joke where Daphne is flattered and Velma is pissed. So I'm just pointing out that that's a joke that they make. But in case they start looking through the books in the Crystal Cove Library, and during this, Scooby winds up falling asleep. And of course, he then proceeds to wake up seemingly in the Crystal Cove Library, but there's nobody around, and he's very confused. At which point he sees Nova run off into another room, and he proceeds to follow her, and then proceeds to come into a room that is very different from where he was. So the visual here is that it's this big room type deal with red curtains and a zigzag carpet just all over the place. And he starts looking around trying to find Nova. At which point he runs into a man that looks suspiciously like Horatio Caron, the guy who wrote the book of the supernatural that Rambo was reading in the last episode. But the dancing man then proceeds to introduce himself, and he then proceeds to welcome Scooby-Doo to the sitting room. And it also refers to him by name, which causes Scooby-Doo to panic and wake up. And then the book he was holding actually winds up flopping open and revealing a piece of sailcloth, which of course Velma actually is the one who has startled him awake, pointing out that she actually found something about the Dandy Highwayman. And yeah, she starts looking into it. They started talking about it, but then they note what Scooby had actually found. And they found out that the Dandy Highwayman is actually a character in a story. So they point out that whoever is doing this probably knows the story about the Dandy Highwayman. But then Velma notices what Scooby-Doo was actually holding, and she gets a good look at the sailcloth that he found, and it's revealed to actually be the Corto Lobby, the fourth key, which of course is just weird that it's just stuffed in a book somewhere, but she notes that it wasn't real. That doesn't seem like it was coincidence that they came here and found it. She notes that whatever it is, it seems to be important. So they point out that obviously coming here was in fact the thing they needed to do. And it's at this point where Fred points out that obviously since they now know that was in fact why they came here. He then points out that now that they know that the Dandy Highwayman is in fact what the Dandy Highwayman is, he proceeds to set a trap to actually trap the Dandy Highwayman. And his plan is to dress Shaggy and Scooby up in drag, and have them pretend to be, beautiful, rich women which are both the ideal target for the Dandy Highwayman. Of course, the Dandy Highwayman is going to immediately come after them. And Fred's logic is pretty sound. He points out that obviously the Dandy Highwayman should be able to resist that, but Velma points out that where he went wrong is that he picked Shaggy and Scooby to fill the role of the quote-unquote beautiful women, which, of course, they're itching and scratching their pantyhose, so, of course, it's not really working. And it's at this point where Velma points out that maybe she and Daphne should have gone out to actually have played the role of the damsels, but Fred points out that there's no way in hell he's letting anything like that happen. Pointing out that he literally just got Daphne back and he's not going to let anything happen to her again. So, kind of confirming that they didn't get back together in the last episode. My bad, didn't realize that was what was going on. Oops. But In any case, Daphne is very happy about the fact about Fred's admiration of love about how he's going to protect her no matter what. But then he also proceeds to point out that he also knows how weak she can get when she's hungry as well, and they haven't eaten in a while. But of course, at this point where Daphne just suddenly disappears without a trace, and this is what causes Fred Daphne Velma to freak out, because obviously Daphne was right next to them, and now she's gone. So they start looking for her, and eventually they do see Daphne disappear around a corner behind a bush. And Fred proceeds to give chase after her, but then the Dandy Highwayman appears with Daphne on the back of his motorcycle, and he drives off while Fred panically chases after them on foot. So, he tries to chase after him and fails, because obviously the Dandy Highwayman and Daphne, they're on a motorcycle while he is not. He's running on feet. But in case, it's at this point where Velma then proceeds to drive them all home, because as we find out, Fred is an inconsolable wreck now. He cannot function properly. So Velma's taken over the role of driving them around. So, which of course is important. But of course, Shaggy and Scooby are pointing out that she's obviously driving a little bit too slow. Pointing out that she's going like 5 miles an hour. But she points out that she's simply driving carefully, because as she points out, some of the worst accidents you can have are when you're 5 minutes away from your house. But of course, Scooby and Shaggy, while sympathetic with that, point out that she's also been 5 minutes away from her house for the past hour. So there's really nothing to worry about. In any case, she then proceeds to park outside the front of her house, and she then proceeds to reveal who her key suspect is in all of this. Proceeding to reveal the pool boy. She points out that the pool boy, she thinks the pool boy is prime suspect for this, because not only does he have a British accent and kind of looks like the Dandy Highwayman, but she also points out that Angie kind of hired him prematurely. So until the pool goes in, he has nothing but free time on his hands. And of course, Scooby and Shaggy do comment that he's living the dream, but this causes him to actually. This does bring up an interesting thing. That's it's obvious. It would obviously be somebody who would have a lot of time to do this kind of things. But in any cases, at this point, where meanwhile, we then find out that the Dandy Highwayman just has a cave out in the middle of nowhere where he keeps all of the beautiful women he quote unquote abducts, but also just a huge pile of all the valuables just sitting up in the corner of the room for just whatever reason. He doesn't try to spend any of it, he just keeps it. But in case, he then proceeds to walk in. But in any case, everybody is seemingly very bored about the fact that they're there. Everybody's just kind of doing their own things. You got Marinelle's, you've also got Nan and Daphne, but also the woman that got abducted as well. The random woman whose name isn't really known in the episode. But because at this point, the Dandy Highwayman walks over and asks her if everything's all right, and he does also he says that she wanted to talk, and Daphne asks him why he would even think they want to talk, but he points out that because she's a woman, and she always likes to share and talk about things, and he also points out that he, for one, is the kind of person who wants to listen. He points out that he would absolutely love to hear anything she talks about, regardless of what it is. He doesn't really care. But of course, Daphne really tells him that he's good and rejects his advances, and he really points out that she seems like she hasn't been accustomed to living there yet, and does agree to give her some space, and proceeds to go talk to some of the other women. At which point, Daphne, since she's sitting next to the money pile, proceeds to spy her phone, proceeds to snap it up, and proceeds to actually start texting Fred, and Fred believes it's actually Daphne making a mewling coup, which of course, even though Shaggy points out that obviously it is just Daphne, just him getting a text message, and of course he goes to check it and does discover that that's Daphne, and she then proceeds to text him and proceeds to reveal that she has a plan to trap the Dandy Highwayman and that she's all right. And Fred spying Velma, well, specifically the Dinkley's dynamite cabinet, then reveals that he actually does have a plan as well, and then texts her whenever she's ready. At which point, Daphne does proceed to do something pretty smart. She proceeds to go on to explain how the Dandy Highwayman should actually go abduct Angie Dinkley. He proceeds to go on and asks her if he knows Angie Dinkley, and he reveals that he in fact does not. And he proceeds to go on to explain. She proceeds to go on to explain how she's actually very wealthy, and also loves to talk and loves to read. And the Dandy Highwayman, realizing he can't leave someone like that out of his little circle, then decides to actually get on his motorcycle and go abduct him. While Daphne proceeds to text Fred telling him that he's on his way. And sure enough, we then see what is presumably presumably I'll get to that, but what is presumably Angie Dinkley, as well as the pool boy talking in what is going to be the site for the new pool. When the Dandy Highwayman suddenly appears on top of the roof and tries to drive after and tries to abduct Angie Dinkley, but then, quote unquote, Angie turns around and it's revealed to actually just be Velma in disguise, and she tells him that she's not going anywhere. At which point the rest of the gang proceed to spring a series of nets to kind of quarter off where the Dandy Highwayman can and can't go. And with left with no choice, the Dandy Highwayman eventually drives his motorcycle into the TNT cabinet, which he has to jump off of to get away from it. But he's blown away by the explosion and winds up landing in a net, and that's how he winds up getting caught. So yeah, he winds up getting captured because of that. At which point the rest of the gang then proceeds to get ready to unmask him, and it's revealed to actually be the librarian. So yeah, as I said, he was important, but yeah, the librarian, it's at this point where the police show up, and the librarian then proceeds to reveal what his end game plan actually was. As it turns out, he was literally just lonely and always read about other people having fabulous adventures, but never got to have one for himself. So that's essentially what his entire plan was. He spent his entire life reading books, not really being able to make friends, and eventually, after reading enough of them, he just decided to make his own character. He decided to become the Dandy Highwayman, and would go out and would be the kind of a baron of adventure. He would go out, he would rob people of their valuables, and just have an adventurous life. That's why he hasn't spent any of the money he stole. He literally there was literally just things to him. He didn't want it. He didn't steal it specifically because he needed it. He just stole it because it was, well, it played into his idea of adventure. And he also proceeds to go on he also used a lot of, because he reads a lot, he used a lot of training manuals and a couple of other things to both teach himself how to do a British accent, and then also teach himself how to drive a motorcycle, which of course is the important thing. But also the big thing is that he learned while doing all of this is how to actually approach women and get them to talk to him. As it turns out, he figured out that the best way to do that was to simply look at them when they were talking. And of course he realizes that this was some sort of revolutionary new thing, when in actuality, he's just doing what should be just basic human decency. Just looking at somebody, listening to them when they're talking to you, and that's about it. And of course, he also proceeds to reveal that he actually started learning to actually, quote unquote, to actually listen to women when he actually started a book club, and that's how he learned how to talk to women, and that wound up forming the crux of his plan. He wanted to impress women, and the best way to do that was to just quite literally just listen to them when they were talking. And of course, Sheriff Stone doesn't buy any of this for a second, pointing out that obviously he thinks the idea of quote unquote listening to women is just a bunch of magic hoo-ha, and he also proceeds to asks how he really did it. And the Dandy Highwayman reveals that actually he didn't really have any sort of trick. The only real magic he used was a pair of earplugs, which he points out he only ever used when he absolutely needed to. He points out that they only ever used them when the going got tough, and when he was riding on his motorcycle and it was making a lot of noise, or when he just didn't want to listen to women literally all the time. So that winds up being enough for Sheriff Stone to arrest him. And even though he openly he is arrested for stealing, Daphne and Mayor Nettles then show up, and Mayor Nettles then proceeds to feel, Mayor Nettles and Daphne proceed to feel bad for him, with Daphne pointing out that all he really wanted to do was impress women. And although Sheriff Stone points out that he heard all of that from him, and then proceeds to put him in the back of the mystery machine, or rather at the back of the squad car while the kids drive off in the mystery machine. At which point, Daphne points out that she's happy that all of that whole ordeal is over and done with, and then proceeds to profess that she now realized how much Fred means to her, because she had the perfect man right in front of her, and she was more interested in Fred than the actual Dandy Highwayman. And Fred is revealed to actually be having his own little conversation in his head, and tells her that he would love to go out for ice cream, which of course causes her to ask if he was actually listening to her the whole time. And he then proceeds to reveal that he was actually quote unquote listening like a man, which involves wearing earplugs, which of course Daphne annoys both Daphne and Velma to no end, and Velma is just upset that was the actual takeaway they took from this. And of course, there's this point where Cheyenne then proceeds to unveil his own pair of earplugs and reveals that was the best conversation he and Velma had since they broke up. So, yeah, the episode kind of takes away that you shouldn't listen to women, but you listen to women. Listen to your significant other, listen to whoever. Just listen to them when they're talking to you. Basic human conversation is how you can maintain a relationship. That's it. Just listen. But in any case, that's the takeaway that they decide to take off on. But the more important lesson is listen to women, listen to women or whoever the hell you're actually talking to, because that's how you form relationships. But in case after that quote unquote uplifting moral, we then reveal that Scooby's actually having another nightmare inside the mystery machine, and he's in the sitting room again. He's very confused. At which point the dancing man comes out again and tells him that there's someone that needs to meet him. And then we see Nova, who walks out, and Scooby's very happy to see her. But then Nova speaks and reveals that she's not actually Nova, but rather a strange creature that has inhabited her body so that she can converse with Scooby-Doo through a loved one. And she then proceeds to go, and Nova, and the being calling itself Nova, then proceeds to go on and explains how it's actually an Anunnaki, which, yeah, if you don't know, it's like this really old, ancient god type thing. And she then proceeds to explain what the Anunnaki are, about how they're about what Nibiru actually is. That's Nibiru is actually this barrier between worlds, that's the people of Nibiru and the people of Earth are able to interact when the barrier gets weaker between the two worlds, and that's what enables the Anunnaki to come to Earth. And she then proceeds to explain that how actually the Anunnaki have no physical form; they inhabit animals to talk to people. And she also proceeds to explain how it's because of that some animals can talk in the universe of Scooby-Doo while others cannot. Which does explain a couple of things, actually quite a few things, considering how many shows cross over with Scooby-Doo. Literally, the explanation is that if anybody can talk, if there's an animal that can talk in the universe of Scooby-Doo, they're probably descended from the Anunnaki. That's the explanation that this series is going with. But yeah, we also see a mural of a series of famous pantheons throughout human history, and of course they all contain various animal avatars from throughout human history. All the animal-based god-like figures that have appeared just throughout human religion, which is a cool little idea. It implies that the Anunnaki have just been around forever, and they've been helping humanity for a long, long time. And but of course, Nova then proceeds to go on to explain how actually not all members of the race are benevolent, and then proceeds to explain that the evil entity, the thing that's been the overarching antagonist of the series so far, is actually an Anunnaki. It's actually an Anunnaki trapped on Earth that is probably the most evil one of the bunch. It tried to take over the world once, and Scooby tells Scooby that he can't allow it to wake up and get out and be free again. Otherwise, the world is going to be in danger, and more specifically, his life is going to be in danger. So she tells him that she can't let it out of its coffin, that they must persevere. At which point Scooby then proceeds to wake up and very panically tells the rest of the Mystery Incorporated that the cursed treasure is evil, and that they have to destroy it. And which causes the rest of the gang to actually panic as they drive off. So yeah, this episode, it has a big implication there. That's and obviously the Anunnaki. That's a cool concept that I'm happy they're actually exploring, because yeah, the concept of the Anunnaki is like really old thing. It's an old religious thing, and it also is implied that I think the Anunnaki are like a vert from a very old civilization, and then Scooby-Doo just kind of adapted to be like, actually, every single religion that's had an animal-based mythology has been Anunnaki. It's not just a one-off thing. It's always been a thing. But Yeah, I do kind of like that idea, and also the little disturbing implication that all the evil and all the people in the world, that, well, it goes on to explain that the Anunnaki are actually just this really old, very ancient race, but also listen to people when they're talking to you. That's the important thing from this. Listen to women, I mean, the lore of this is cool, now let's be perfectly honest, but the more important thing is listen to people when they're talking to you. That is what the episode is about, and that is what you should probably take away from it. That's an important message to listen to. But, in case, yeah, that's gonna do for my review of Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, be sure to go check out my Twitch as well, because I'm trying to push for partner. I would very much appreciate it if everybody could help with that. Just go check those out. Link is down in the description. Just go check those out. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. As the next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!